I was in junior high in Pennsylvania, eastern PA. I lived about an hour north of Philadelphia. And the day of the shooting, I was in English class, 8th grade English class. And Miss Gordon was called out and came back in tears. So we knew something was off, and then she told us that the president had been shot. She didn't say killed, but had been shot. And it was just, we were just stunned. You know, didn't know, well, what happens now? Someone's killed the president or someone shot the president. So that's what I remember, was her coming back in weeping and told us that Kennedy had been shot. Both of my parents were Republicans, and they voted for Nixon. But I remember it was an issue as to whether or not we wanted a Catholic in the White House. You know, that was a big deal. And he was so young, particularly following in the heels of Ike. But I think that the first thing that touched me was his fitness campaign. And when it came to our school and we had tests, we had, it was the president's fitness effort, and how many sit-ups can you do, how many pull-ups, how many push-ups, everybody's going to get into shape. And of course I look at what Michelle Obama is doing now, trying to go after obesity in our country. I thought, well, that's not that far afield from what Kennedy was about. As I look back, it was kind of, he was a mixed, he had a mixed legacy. On the one hand, he launched the Peace Corps, but at about the same time, he also, ramped up the War Corps, the arms race in a major way. And I got swept up in the Vietnam conflict when I was 18, and the MX missile was in part a part of the legacy of Kennedy's escalation of the arms race. So on the one hand, he did some wonderful things. On the other hand, he was a bit problematic in terms of some of the negative things that happened, like the Cuba embargo that continues, unfortunately, to this day. I taught world history. I never taught U.S. history, but of course there's always the connections to be drawn. And I think you hear so much today about American exceptionalism. And one of the things that is part of the Kennedy legacy and aura is this idea of an altruistic American exceptionalism, where we all can serve for the betterment of humankind in our own ways. America can make the world a better place for all of us. And that we can make a difference. Everybody can make a difference. And traveling around, I traveled around for several years after I got out of the Army, and I remember seeing like streets named after Kennedy, in Spain. It's like how'd that happen? And it makes you think about how he impacted the rest of the world. So with my students, we talk about the ups and the downs. We talk about the Alliance for Progress and its impacts on Latin America. We would talk about the escalation of the Cold War, because Kennedy was a Cold Warrior. I mean, he was a product of the Cold War, but he also helped perpetuate the Cold War. We talk about what happened in Southeast Asia, what was going on in Berlin, of course, Cuba. And so, we made connections about there was a network of impacts of the few Kennedy years. When we get further away, and some of the there was talk about his dalliances in the White House, affairs, whatever, and that is so far back that to me doesn't have much substance to it. What I think about those things that were set in motion, I mean, we have to recall the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Bay of Pigs, the embargo. Just a week and a half or so ago, the UN voted again to censure us for the ongoing embargo against Cuba, and only Israel voted with us on this one again. And so that's an annual reminder of part of Kennedy's legacy. But the Peace Corps, I went to a party at Halloween and was chatting with a young woman who had just been in Niger. In the Peace Corps less than 10 years ago. And so that part of the legacy is ongoing. And I think when people take a look at Kennedy and the idealism, the optimism, the energy that he exuded, it still resonates with youth. Youth are idealistic in any case. And I think Kennedy still has a connection to that.
If you were to give him a grade as a president, what would it be?
Kennedy as a president, as a grade, I would give him a B minus.
Why?
Well, because we're still living with some of the negative. The positive, it's amazing, some of the things that he did and how he inspired particularly young people. But, the rest of the world got a hit from this guy, that, something is changing. Kind of like Obama in a way, but Obama's not, golden either. But I think that part of the legacy, for example, our national debt, the idea that we squandered so much money in the nuclear arms race, and Kennedy was a big part of that. The missile gap in 1960. He should have known better with the briefings he was given that if there was a missile gap, it was in our favor. And so the idea that he took that as a political scare tactic, got elected, and then had 1,000 Minuteman missiles constructed, and the Soviets, of course, responded in time, and it launched decades of tit-for-tat escalation. Very costly, and how could those resources have been used otherwise, to improve the lives of people in the developing world in particular. So, I definitely couldn't give him an A. But in some ways, he did some good things, and B minus, I think, for Kennedy.